Did that? We're not done. Or I'm going to take it up to.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our workshop. Our agenda actually says monthly meeting, but tonight is a workshop on May 16th. Trustee Woods is not able to join us tonight. I am in the building, but isolating in my office to keep my germs to myself and mute my cough. But we do meet open meetings requirement of having a physical quorum in the courtroom. So first, I would like to request to add an agenda item today. We had a request from the Haldane Foundation for a table at the bottom of Main Street. Any opposition to adding that to the agenda?
No.
Okay, so we'll do that at the end. Announcements. It is the school budget vote tonight. I nearly forgot, and I never miss a poll. So if you haven't yet gone to the elementary library, polls are open till 9. Get the budget passed. Any other announcements from trustees?
I met with Bugsy and the ITS parking meter kiosk company today, and they said that the locations that we all chose last week are fine. And
oh, great.
Easy to install. Yeah. Relatively. That's famous. Yeah.
So as a reminder, we landed on where?
In front of the old hardware at the corner of Church Street. And in front of Village Hall, and then one at the parking lot. Okay, great. The village attorney is coming on to join us. Hi, Jonathan. Okay, so West Point docking proposal. We have been working back and forth with the legal team at West Point and with Jonathan's colleagues at CMR related to West Point's request to do a trial docking next week in advance of graduation to sort of see if we can get the number of vehicles coming from West Point to Cold Spring during graduation week reduced. West Point has limitations on entering contracts and providing insurance documentation. The village has limitations on we have to receive fair and let's see if I can get it right, Jonathan. Fair and adequate consideration.
Yep, you got it.
There we go. So we are nearly at a contract. I was hoping we'd be able to vote an IMA, an intermunicipal agreement. I was hoping we'd be able to vote on it tonight, but it's not quite done. There are final edits. I'm mindful that this starts next week. This is the last time the board is in session. Where we landed as a proposal was back where we began at a $5 per person, $10 per family price. West Point will count the number of people coming over from their side, and at the end of the week, pay the village the equivalent of the number of bodies that cross from West Point. And they will also take villagers and Phillipstown folks with Department of Defense IDs back. So I don't have something for you to approve, but I guess what I'm looking for is approval in concept, and with final review and approval by the village attorney, authorization to sign.
I'll second. I think that with that amendment to the contract that we've reviewed, it sounds like it will be fine.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And then hopefully once we get this, this was a quick turnaround request, but hopefully we can be more creative with the mechanism that we use with West Point to get people here by boat rather than by car. The film permit request that's on the agenda tonight needs to be tabled. The person making the application wasn't able to get it to Village Hall in time, so that'll move to next week's agenda. Jeff, do I need a motion to table?
No.
Okay. Approval of minutes 2:15. I saw all of Eliza's edits and I'm comfortable with them. Anyone else have any questions or concerns about those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 2/15/23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay, last, let me find the email from I don't know that I printed the email. Jeff, let me know if I don't have this right.
You printed it for us.
Okay. So would you like to read it out?
You did. On behalf of the Haldane School Foundation, this is from Catherine Adler. On behalf of the Haldane School Foundation, I'm asking permission for the board to set up a table at the bottom of Main Street near the bathrooms from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. this Saturday, May 20th, to guide people to the trails or answer any questions regarding the Hudson Valley scavenger hunt we are hosting. Just one table, 2 people. Oh, thanks, Katie McInnes.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. And the info booth isn't open yet, right? Maybe they open Memorial Day.
They open Memorial Day weekend.
It would be helping answer questions, perhaps. Well,
But I think by trails they mean the trail for the scavenger hunt. I don't think they mean directions to hiking trails.
Yeah, they will probably end up
Yeah.
Doing some of that as good citizens.
Okay, so any concerns, conversation?
I'll make a motion to approve the request from Katie McInnes for a table at the foot of Main Street by the Visitor Center for May 20th, this Saturday from 9 to 12 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Jeff, does Katie need to come in and fill anything else out, or we simply?
I'll send her an email, just let her know it was approved.
Okay. Do they need to provide insurance like the Boy Scouts did when they sold Christmas trees down there?
Good question. We haven't asked it from like the Girl Scouts.
Okay.
In the past, and when they set up, so.
Or the History Museum.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a table. It's different than trees and things.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've moved through our business quickly. Moving on to the public hearing related to Chapter 76 noise, 104 signs, and 134 zoning. So first, a review of progress since last week. The ad hoc committee on the ad hoc working group on the zoning update met twice to continue to review public comment and trustee comment and discuss proposed recommendations to the Board of Trustees. Those are still being formulated. They're continuing to work on identifying and responding to legitimate and substantive questions submitted and written and in writing and orally. And answers will be provided to the Board of Trustees and made available to the public as they are reviewed and approved by the village attorney. Thank you everyone for being patient. Chapter 134 is not our only ongoing project in the village. We are also running the village. So sometimes it takes us a little time to get things turned around. So thank you for being patient. Let's see. Ted Fink, the village's consulting planner, proceeded with modifying the draft for 134 based on comments, and he's readying it for public presentation when it's ready and presentation to the board. He is, with Laura, primarily refining parking guidance to reflect concerns that people have expressed, but still strive toward smart growth principles. Within the PMU, is looking at parking requirements and beefing up references to provisions related to independent content experts for the village to review the application, especially around traffic, and stronger cross references to Chapter 57. Eric Worth further refined the map in terms of the color palette, separated colors a bit more. We still need to mark out the historic district and confirm boundaries of the overlay districts. Planning board met with the village attorney and the consulting planner to ask questions regarding process and local land use law related to pre-existing non-conforming lots. Their questions seem to be addressed to their collective satisfaction. And under the leadership of interim chair Yaslin Daniels, they have established a process and a timeline for giving feedback to the trustees, and they're meeting again next Tuesday to formulate a list that they will then flesh out in feedback for us. So that's good forward motion. So we have a few decisions before us tonight to give feedback to Ted so he can keep rolling. I think Ted may have thought the meeting started at 7. Laura, do you want to give him a ping and make sure he's on his way. We do have Jonathan.
But I know he had said, since it's a Tuesday, that he had.
Oh, that's right. He's got another, he sits on a planning board in another municipality. It's all you, Jonathan. Buckle up. Okay.
All right, works for me.
So first, a discussion on form-based zoning in the residential zones, particularly 134-7E related to residential standards. So there was some concern about overlaying form-based zoning in existing neighborhoods, some discomfort. And in discussing it, the working group feels that in modifying the dimensional tables to meet neighborhood characteristics, the draft meets the goals of a form-based approach without imposing a full set of other standards on top. The group, and Laura, if I leave anything out, feel free to hop in, agrees that form-based zoning needs further consideration to be appropriately integrated into current residential districts, and agree that form-based goals are best in new construction. So they will remain an element of the PMU, which is also part of the historic district. And we had a fairly robust conversation about that. The HDRB, we're told that it's going to the printer very soon. They have developed new standards, many of which are form-based they look like form-based zoning standards for the historic district. And the PMU is, of course, located in that district. So we think that it should be sufficient to sort of piggyback in the PMU on the existing design standards for the HDRB with direct references to those specific elements on form, mass, scale, and streetscape standards. That also avoids repetition and potential for conflicting guidance between zoning and HDRB. And it leaves more room for creativity. I think a really important idea that Eric Worth raised was not so constraining with requirements that we lose the capacity for an architect to be creative and build of her time and in a way that looks like her work within our district. That was a compelling argument. So we've requested the current copy of the standards for comparison. And once we have those, we'll make a recommendation to the trustees if folks feel like that seems like a good direction and concept. How do you feel about redrafting in that way?
That sounds appropriate.
Maybe I'll say too that, it was a recommendation in the comprehensive plan to, seriously consider form-based code. And so we included it as, we called this a hybrid, that it includes some elements, but, we had public comments saying that some of it was more template and it didn't fit Cold Springs' particular characteristics. And so with a lot of discussion, we realized, well, what actually fits quite well is these new HDRB design guidelines. And then that way it kind of integrates, it makes the PMU integrate nicely with the existing village that is all under, the historic district and design guidelines. So I think we felt like that was something that helped, kept the intent of the comprehensive plan to have this kind of form-based approach, but work with our specifics well.
That was also one of the critiques of the HDRB, was the PMU adds so much language that we already address. And there was concern about overlap and misinterpretation. So I'm in favor of this modification and giving Ted that direction. I would make a motion to give Ted the direction to move away from the form-based elements of the residential standards and toward the HDRB design standards within the PMU.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that a sufficient motion, clerk?
Yep.
Okay. All right, next goes to the discussion of landscape standards. These were concerns that Eliza raised and a couple of folks in the audience. Section 134.7EH. So the landscape standards were also part of that residential standard for the Rs, the residential districts. And in the same way was pointed out that, you know, we cover some of this already in other chapters. And that is true to a degree. Chapter 36, brush, grass, weeds, and trees, and chapter 122, trees, which relates to public trees, as well as site plan provisions under the new 134-16-1, seem to provide what's required for screening and buffering and public safety. Then it's sufficiently addressed in those chapters. So the recommendation of the ad hoc working group is to remove the landscape standards from the residential zones. Discussion?
I maybe need to refresh my memory on those standards, but
we can table it if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6 lines.
Okay.
Is it, I'm happy to read it, or we can
go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
So it's landscape standards, trees with existing or potential canopy covering sidewalks, driveways, paths, streets, or parking spaces shall be of a type that at maturity or with minor pruning and installation provide a clear height of 8 feet for sidewalks and paths and 12 feet for driveways, parking spaces, and streets. Evergreen trees shall be 18 to 24 inches minimum clear of any sidewalk or pavement edge at the lot line. Ted explained that the 8 feet at the 12 feet at driveways is especially for emergency vehicles to get in and out. But if that's, Kathleen described how that's covered in another chapter. And so there's not much else here. And so it feels redundant, and that you know, it doesn't need to be in chapter 134.
that makes sense.
And I think landscape, there are some landscape factors that are in the PMU.
That's right.
So those would be retained.
Relating to buffering, et cetera. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this proposal. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, similarly, streetscape requirements. These were also part of the standards in the residential zones put forward in 134-7EI. Obviously, streetscape requirements within an existing built environment are tricky. We have to work with the space we have, unless you're working in a newly constructed area like a Butterfield or a Marathon. Again, looking back to the work the HDRB has done, they've done a really solid job of contemplating streetscape within the historic district standards, particularly related to infill construction on district streets and additions, and the way that new construction relates to the street and to public spaces in the neighborhood. And I think that these provide solid examples for us to come back to such concepts in a village-wide approach. And, you know, thinking too, last week we had some conversation about what happens now, what can be addressed now, and what rightly has another look. The concept of complete streets was just emerging when the comprehensive plan was adopted. And pedestrian privileging, all those concepts like that have really emerged and grown since 2012. So there's a lot to be learned, both from executed examples and from the planning literature. So the ad hoc working group recommended that the streetscape requirements be added to the list of recommendations to be undertaken within a comp plan update. Thoughts?
Maybe I'll also say, so initially, Marie Early was one of the people who pointed to this and said, why is this in the residential section that talks about sort of what happens on a lot when this is happening on the street?
Right.
At first we thought, oh, you're right, we should move it so that it's comprehensively addressing, you know, all districts. It should also apply to the multifamily districts, and you know, so that was one step. And then with, you know, sort of more thinking about it, realized that it's ideally even bigger than that, and so then brings itself into more of a comprehensive plan update. At the same time, it's not like we're missing in the existing streets aren't going to change that much in the very short term, right? Like it calls for 4 feet sidewalks on all streets. Well, if they're not 4 feet now, it's going to be a little while, you know, we're going to have to work hard to get them wider than that. And so, so I think that it is more of a long-term planning process for most of the village.
What does it mean for the PMU? Do they have their own set of standards regarding complete streets, or is it not there?
Yes, that it remains in the PMU.
That's really the only area that would be a new development for complete streets unless the village undertook an actual complete street study.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would be a loss not to include it there where you're talking about new construction.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
I would make a motion to accept this proposal as well. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Well, that is the end of our conversation topics. Are there other that I had laid out? Are there other code related topics that the trustees would like to raise? We'll have a bigger chunk of progress in the next round, I think.
Although I do think that these were important. You know, we heard a good amount of public comment, including in session last week, concerned about this. And so, you know, I think it reflects some listening. Yeah. And a good adaptive process.
Okay. Go ahead, Liza.
Thanks for doing it, to the whole committee for taking on all of these requests from the public and making the amendments for us.
Sure. So from a process standpoint, we're going to keep the public hearing open, and we will review revisions as they come forward. Is there an audience in the room with all of you?
Yes.
I have a couple people here. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to open for public comment. I'm going to lay out a couple of items. We've heard quite a lot from a few voices. Some of that is beginning to deteriorate into speculation and opining, and some ad hominem attacks, which isn't appropriate and it's not a good use of anyone's time. So for tonight's session, I would move to the trustees that we limit public comment to 1 recognition on the floor and 3 minutes time per recognition per speaker. Do trustees favor that limitation?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a timer. If you can't say what you want to say in 3 minutes, please submit it in writing to the clerk. And I would also recommend that going forward, until there's a revised draft to comment upon, that comments be submitted in writing throughout the continued public hearing until we have that draft delivered, the EAF and the chapter, the 3 chapters, and we can reopen oral comment again. Jonathan, any guidance there?
No, I would just remind members of the public too that, you know, even though the board is making motions and making decisions on revisions, this is still the informal stage of the process, and the board has not adopted anything yet.
That's right. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to clerk because I can't see people in the room. I see Walter, and I don't see a hand raised from Walter.
Jane, you want to make a comment?
I can give you what I wrote. So go ahead and state your name and address, Jane.
Yes, my name is Jane Silvertim. I live at 7 Rock. I now live, this is my comment, if you want to set the timer. I now live at 7 Rock Street, but in the mid-70s and the mid-80s, I lived at 4850 Main Street before I moved to Chestnut Street. This is very personal, but I'm glad not many people. I had early breast cancer. I had breast cancer when I was either 42 or 43. Back in the day, there was talk all the time of Cold Spring being a cancer alley. And there was a New York State Health Department study of cancer here in Cold Spring. I don't know if it was related to the marathon batteries or if it was related to pipes and water. I really don't know. I was new here. It was very scary and it was a health issue. But, and because I moved several times, I don't know where my records are, but that's my question. Are there any records of cancer related to people who've lived all around the Battery or who just lived in the village of Cold Spring related to the Marathon Batteries, since it's a dangerous place. That's my, and I wrote it out, Jeff, you can have it.
Thank you, Jane. Just for your reference, all of the EPA related documentation is on the village website. You can also have a look at the DEC's website for the public information that you're looking for. Anyone else in the room who'd like to make a comment?
I think people should be worried about cancer.
I can't see, guys. Are there hands up?
There's no other hands up.
Okay, Mr. Almer, are you set? All right, well, seeing none, I make a motion to continue the public hearing to May 23rd.
Well, second?
No, May 24th.
Okay.
24th, that's right, thank you. There was a second? Yes, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Good night.
Night, Michael.
Hey.